Hello again and welcome to Don't Mess with the Mommas. This episode, episode 21, is called From Grief to Growth. A little bit heavy discussion, but hopefully you'll be really encouraged how we are all united in the sense of everybody experiences some kind of grief. I am here today with Carla Brown and myself, Arlaana Black, and my husband is here, Charles Black, who is going to share a little bit about his experience with grief. Chuck, a few years back, you tragically lost your daughter from your first marriage due to a drug overdose. How has your practice of SGI Buddhism allowed you to continue with this great difficulty?
Well, first of all, I think, many different types of grief exist, and the type of grief of losing a child before you as parent is probably one of the most difficult in the grief spectrum. But I was able to overcome it because of my faith in Nichiren Buddhism as practiced with the Soka Gakkai International. And in our belief system, if you will, life, number one, is eternal. There's a realization that if the deceased person is to be happy and make a fruitful transition and joyful transition to their next existence, then you as the grieving person have to make a determination based on the practice of Nichiren Buddhism to become happy. Because of cause and effect, if the grieving person determines and goes on a track to become happy, then the deceased person can be happy and have a great transition toward their new life.
I love that. I love what you just said. And I know I had that same experience when my parents passed away. I was encouraged to become the happiest person because that would provide energy to their life as they transitioned as well. You also talked about the 3 R's, which many people, as they approach death, really have experience, and a difficult experience. The 3 R's being resentment, remorse, and regret. And you alluded to that, and you said through your practice you understood that more, and you didn't have any feelings of that, in particular, that remorse. Of course, we grieve, and we have to face the reality of our grieving, and yes, there's nothing more difficult than seeing your child pass away before you. But I think you have a different perspective now on those 3 R's that many people experience: regret, remorse, and resentment.
I didn't experience any of those 3 aspects because of my practice. Part of our practice is to always do our best, and I knew that as a parent over the years with the experience of my daughter's addiction, that I had always made the maximum effort that I could for her to recover, although that did not happen. So there was no reason to feel remorseful, regretful, or resentful. This is just the way things are when someone is drug addicted.
Yes.
Very few are able to break free, and many, if not most, are not able to break free because of how drugs affect the chemistry in the brain and how dependent persons who take those drugs become on them.
And absolutely. But what's amazing, and we have this expression in our practice, changing poison to medicine. And even though she passed away shortly before her death, she was able to give birth to a very thriving and beautiful young woman who is finishing up her college years. And that's, of course, a tremendous benefit. And I think, Anderson Cooper has recently been doing a podcast about grief. And something he said I thought was very interesting, that he said he's closer to his father now, after his father's passing, than he was when his father was alive, because he's able to dialogue with his deceased father. And I don't know if you've experienced that in any way, just having a dialogue with your daughter, or just being able to connect to her eternal life.
Well, in Buddhism, we believe that there's basically a 49-day transition period from the current life and the period of non-existence into the next life, so to speak, a reemergence of that sum of cause and effect in one's life to reemerge in a new life. So I really chanted and prayed for her to be one with the law of cause and effect, as put forth in the Lotus Sutra, and to be in the company of people in the SGI, and to reemerge in a joyful life state.
And I'm sure you were able to accomplish that, absolutely, and that continues moment to moment. Is there anything else you want to add, Chuck, before we turn it over and put it back to Carla and me?
Well, yeah, that I definitely believe that, as we experience prayer in the SGI, which is a determination, not a begging from an external source, that we can communicate with those who are deceased and not present with us in this current existence that we are experiencing right now in the moment. The deaf cannot hear,
Nor the blind see
nor
lightning.
the blind see, yet
Lightning.
they exist. So, yeah, and I actually had a weird experience where I was lying down in bed one evening, and this was like, a couple of weeks after my daughter deceased. And I don't know how to explain it, but I felt a physical embrace, like, it's okay, Dad. And then, we had an experience with a guy who is, a psychic, and he, communicated the fact that she was saying, it's okay, Dad.
Right, yeah. And it is. It's always okay. Thank you so much, Chuck. This is Chuck Black, and just sharing his experience with his deceased daughter. And once again, we would love to hear your experiences. You can find us at mommas.podcast. That's mommas.podcast@gmail.com. And we all have such an experience. Somehow, we've all experienced grief in some kind of way. So thank you so much, Chuck. Carla, we're back with you. And I know you did a little research about the different types of grief. It's not only death. We always think about that when we hear the word grief. But would you like to just go into the various types of grief that people experience?
Sure. There's bereavement grief, the loss of someone. Then there's anticipatory grief. And that's the grief you have when you're expecting something negative to happen, like a terminal illness. Then there's disenfranchisement grief, loss of being socially supported. Maybe you lost a pet, but maybe people don't see that as something you should be grieving over. Then there's ambiguous grief, loss without closure or certainty, complicated grief, and that's prolonged grief that can affect your daily living. Then there's collective grief, something that we all experience at the same time. 911 was an example of that. Cumulative grief, uh, uh, suffering a bunch of losses, one right after the other. Then there's secondary grief, which is like you get hit with your husband dying, but then the next thing is the loss of the financial, the emotional connection that you have. And people can go through all these different stages, different types of grief differently.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so now, Arlaana, how do you deal with grief?
So I've, of course, had many losses in my life, as many people have had. And the most difficult, of course, was my mother, who had many, many mental illnesses, which I've talked about in the past. But even though she died from cancer, it was a lightening of her, what we call karma. But that was difficult, too, because she died at age 65. But I got encouragement that, just as Chuck was explaining, I had to be the happiest person, because that would energize my parents' passing, because they couldn't chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, so to provide energy for their lives. And I think that I've really tried my best to really follow that, and to all of the people who have passed. And we say when we chant, we're affecting 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And we did an experiment. I would always do this experiment when I was teaching, and the first day of class, and I would hand everybody, we would hold an energy stick, and we would all be connected. We would hold our hands. As soon as one person, and the energy stick would flash, as soon as one person broke the link, the energy would dissipate entirely. You would no longer hear the buzz of the energy stick. So showing we're all connected, we're all interconnected through energy. So even when one dies, just as Chuck was relaying to us, neither the deaf hear thunder nor the blind see lightning, but they still exist. So life is existing throughout the world and throughout the universe. How about you, Carla?
Well, let's see. I think my mother's death was also very heavy. And at one point, I had to go all the way to the depths of it, where I felt like I just wanted to crawl in the grave with her. And when it reached that level, then I came back up. And I wanted to get back to life. I wanted to be in a chorus. I wanted to be with the living. I wanted to be singing, And so I was able to, overcome that.
Absolutely. So I think we can, at this point, wrap it up, since we already had an interview and we talked about, the different types of grief. And we grow from it because we're all connected. And because of that, and after 9/11, people really united. And people tend to unite after a tragedy has occurred because we're all empathic in some way. We all have that empathic nature to really be able to connect and care about others.
Yes.
So to go over the different points that we discussed, we see death as an opportunity to really transform one's life and really to lead a more happy life, more aware of your life, become more resilient. When you can deal with death, you've dealt with it, and you become stronger as a result, and you can really share other people's sufferings more easily.
Right.
And as Carla said, everybody experiences grief in some way. It's not necessarily just the passing of a loved one or a friend or a coworker, but it's many, many different types of grief, and we struggle in the same or similar kinds of way. And I love that expression, neither the deaf hear thunder nor the blind see lightning, but still they exist. So life is forever existing throughout the universe.
True.
And sometimes you can have a dialogue, more get to know the person after their death even more than when they're alive. And when I was a kid, I wrote this thing when I was 11 years old. I had it on my wall, my disgusting wall, that was lavender, and it said, "Death is the inspiration of life." And many years later, I think that really is true, knowing that we're going to die, that we're inspired to really, live the best we can. So in closing, encouraging words, I'll share two. Cycles of life and death can be likened to the alternating periods of sleeping and wakefulness. We can understand death as a state in which, just as sleep prepares us for the next day's activities, we rest and replenish ourselves for new life. Viewed in this life, death is not to be reviled, but should be acknowledged with life as a blessing to be appreciated. And then one more. The experience of losing a loved one impels us toward a deeper understanding of life. Everyone fears and is saddened by death. That is natural. But by struggling to overcome the pain and sadness that accompanies death, we become sharply aware of the dignity and preciousness of life and develop the compassion to share the sufferings of others as our own. So once again, this is Carla Brown and Arlaana Black with Don't Mess with the Mommas. And we are talking about From Grief to Growth. We would love to hear from you. Mommas, MOMMAS podcast@gmail.com. And just look for us, check us out on any platform. It's Don't Mess with the Mommas. Make sure you spell Mommas, MOMMAS. Bye-bye for now. Eternal hugs.
Bye.
Bye.